We are with Harry McDonald, Emerging Lawyer Award finalist for the QLS Excellence in Law Awards 2022. Hello, Harry.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited, and a representative from the Sunshine Coast, beautiful part of our state, and you're at Aitken Legal as a lawyer specialising in employment.
Yeah, I spent the first 4.5 years of my career at a general firm doing commercial and property work and trying to squeeze in as much employment law work as I could. That was always my passion, but finally made the switch earlier this year to Aitken Legal to pursue my specialisation in employment law, which I'm absolutely loving.
Well, you've picked a great time to be an employment lawyer. There is so much work for employment lawyers coming out of COVID and in this new landscape. So I think a wise business decision, as well as a really interesting practice area as a lawyer. So you will, I think, have some job security for a little while.
Absolutely. It's been a really busy, really busy 2 years. And a great piece of advice I got from a really well-respected employment lawyer about 6 months into the pandemic when I asked him how he was doing, and he was drowning a little bit. And he said, employment lawyers tend to do well in pandemics. So it's been a busy 2 years.
Yes, when the world changes and the world
Absolutely.
of work changes, then the way in which employment law and how it interacts with different workplaces and policies and HR teams, my gosh, they have been busy people.
Absolutely.
And creating lots of nice legal questions for you, I suspect. But we will come back to the why of employment law and what you're doing now. But the reason we wanted to talk to you today was because you have, amongst many nominees, been shortlisted as a finalist for the Emerging Leader Award for the QLS. So we are delighted to be speaking to you today and so thrilled to see the calibre of nominees, and the finalists were exceptionally chosen, and we are proud to support the Emerging Leader Award this year. Now, as a busy lawyer, totally inundated in employment law as the world changes, did you even able to come up for air and enjoy that moment when you found out that you were in fact a finalist?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to have a great celebration with the team. The partner at my firm, Aitken Legal, partner Chris Campbell, nominated me for the award, and he is based in Melbourne, but he got to come up to the Sunshine Coast and we got to have a celebration with the team.
Oh, that's incredible, because I mean, it's very rare that you see someone who's only just joined a firm for like 6 months or something like that to be nominated by the partner. That's a pretty big deal, and must have been a pretty good feather in your cap inside Aitken Legal. And it's always nerve-wracking when you're moving firms, right? So this must have gone, okay, I think I'm doing all right. I think this was a good decision, and I think that maybe I'm going to be a great employment lawyer for Aitken Legal.
Yeah, I hope so. Chris Campbell, the partner at Aitken Legal who nominated me, has been an employment lawyer, a really well-respected employment lawyer for more than 20 years. So getting that nod of approval from him, being less than 6 months at the firm, was really great news for me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations again. We're thrilled to see you as a finalist and are very excited to reveal who will be the winner on the night. But either way, I think there'll be cheers and champagne no matter the outcome, because it is a great achievement to just be recognised in this category, particularly as a junior lawyer, and I think for you, particularly having only recently moved firms. So well done you. Now, let's go back a little in time, and could you briefly just tell us a little bit about sort of where you grew up, your university experience briefly, and your career journey thus far?
Yeah, I grew up on the Sunshine Coast. And
so you haven't gone very far.
I haven't gone very far, and I was always really passionate about the Sunshine Coast, and I wanted to be able to learn and then get a really great job without having to leave the sunny coast. I was really happy that I was able to do that. I studied my Bachelor of Laws at the University of the Sunshine Coast, and I was actually in an inaugural law cohort when the program first started in 2014.
Incredible.
So I got to study a great law degree without leaving the sunny coast, and then get a great job without having to leave the Sunshine Coast.
That's a great story, and I think often people feel like they need to, in order to have a great career, they either need to travel to the metropolitan capital cities or even for university, let alone they would normally think that they have to stay there for a career, get a great job. I mean, you're working with a fantastic firm, a nationally recognised partner, where the sun shines all the time and you can duck to the beach. I mean, that's a pretty great lifestyle choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the landscape's definitely changing now with COVID. Much more, many more people are realising that they can do that and live in areas like the Sunshine Coast and study at great universities and work for great law firms. But I'm really proud that I was still able to do that even before COVID and that everyone else is jumping on as well now.
I think that the other interesting point is that we're seeing more and more diversity in universities that offer a law program. And I think there's a shift in employer mindset away from you had to come from a sandstone university in order to be a successful lawyer. I mean, you are a perfect example of someone who has been able to there's been many leaders who you've worked with that have kind of set that idea aside and said, well, actually, this is a law student who is literally the inaugural class of law at a university, but he's a great talent and let's back him. So I think that marks a really interesting time for our profession in terms of a shift.
Absolutely. I think a lot of lawyers and law firms are realising that there's so much more emphasis to be put on attitude rather than aptitude, to focus on someone's ability to interact with people and form personal relationships, and that their practice of the law is going to be completely dependent on their ability to interact with people.
What a great point. And I think the success of future firms is really going to rest on their adoption of that mindset of attitude over aptitude. And that's something that as recruiters we look at all the time. If somebody comes through with all the skills in the world, but they either have a shitty mindset, it's a negative interaction as a person-to-person interaction when I meet them, it's very hard for me to onboard with them and get excited about them as a candidate because I wouldn't want to put them in front of my clients, right?
Absolutely.
So then you have to extrapolate that and say, well, would the firm want to put them in front of their clients? And so I think it's a really interesting point you make, and you're right. And I think it's probably different strokes for different folks, of course, but the idea of having a good attitude being a cornerstone of employability, I think, is a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very different in metropolitan areas or regional areas like the Sunshine Coast. When you've got large firms where you can sit in non-client facing roles, it might not be as important. But coming from an area like the Sunshine Coast, I was working at one of the largest law firms and there was about 30 or 40 people. Almost everyone has to have a client-facing role. You're at a much earlier stage in your career expected to develop relationships with clients and referrers. So you need to have that personable quality.
Yeah, well, I think you make a great point as well about what the sort of advantages are of being in a regional location. Although regional is an interesting idea for the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast, a big metropolis now really, and thriving legal communities. That said, they still kind of operate in that kind of small town vibe where they have lots of smaller firms, right? Yeah. So without the presence of many of the big players. So do you think a part of your success in terms of being able to be, a solid client-facing lawyer with those soft skills and client skills so developed so early on in your career is due to the fact you were in a regional town?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. In an area like the Sunshine Coast, we've got somewhere between 600 and 800 lawyers. And the absolute majority of those are sole practitioners. They're there by themselves, or they might have one other lawyers. They're in these micro firms. So those soft skills that you develop in law firms that size are completely just invaluable.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you, because I think that there is many benefits to be working as a regional practitioner, particularly in the early years, because they're not skills you get access to develop because you don't client face until many years down the track in some cases at larger firms where you can sort of be stuck doing the cog in the wheel type work. So I think a really great way to start your career is in a regional firm or small suburban firm for that matter. Now, talking about the progress of law and what it takes to be successful in different environments. Has that led you to be a different type of leader? Although you're still relatively junior in your career, you must be thinking about leadership and how that might play out for you on the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last firm I was at, I was in a leadership position. I was an associate director at the firm, and I had up to 10 staff at one point reporting directly to me. And having that thrust on me at such an early point in my career, where I was expecting the legal work, but I wasn't expecting to have to develop those people and
management skills. How many PAE were you at that stage?
About 3.
Holy moly, that is incredible. So most 3-year PAE lawyers that I know are doing document review.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's absolutely something to be said for both sides of that coin. You need to be able to spend time developing your actual lawyering skills and learn how to lawyer. But I took a lot out of having those management responsibilities, and it taught me a lot about the kind of leader that I want to be.
Okay, great. And it's really going to bridge the gap for you when time comes for you to take on leadership at Aitken Legal potentially. What type of lawyer and what type of leader do you want to be in the future at Aitken Legal?
I see myself as becoming the type of leader who's capable and can lead by example, but isn't afraid to surround themselves with people who are more capable and can benefit from good leadership. I think for me, it's also really important that leaders can recognise their own limitations when they're engaging in leadership exercises or debates of any kind. Leaders need to be able to recognise the limitations of their own knowledge so they know when they need to seek and rely on advice from an expert in another field.
Excellent. I mean, you touched on a really good point about this dedication to lifelong learning, essentially. And I think that's an incredibly good point because once we become leaders in the law, it doesn't stop. And the idea that you are dedicated to that future practice. And is that also from a personal development perspective as well as a technical perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That learning never stops. And there's so much, especially in employment law. It's such a complex and intricate area of the law that's constantly developing and heavily politicised. So every time there's a change of government. So not only are we updating our technical knowledge constantly, but all of those people management skills are just constantly developing as well.
And speaking about the sort of exact type of employment work that you're doing at the moment, is it both front and back end?
Yeah, Aitken Legal practices exclusively for employers. So we do all raft of things, right from that front end, the employment contracts, HR policies, which has been really relevant in the last few years with the respected work reforms, right through to complex litigation matters, from unfair dismissals, general protections claims, through to all types of employment and industrial relations litigation usually in the Federal Circuit Court.
And I think that it's a really interesting area of law because you get to span both the front and back end of law, whereas some other practices, of course, are niched at one end or the other. And that would help you be a well-rounded lawyer who understands sort of the whole life cycle of employment matters.
Yeah.
And don't really sure where I was going with that.
That's right. I can.
Yep, talk to me.
I think you're absolutely right. A lot of front-end lawyers, commercial lawyers, miss out on the value that litigation lawyers can provide because they see how a deal goes wrong and how a contract can go wrong, and it might really well inform the drafting of a matter from the outset. And if they had the knowledge that litigation lawyers have, knowing how it goes wrong, they might handle that front-end transactional work slightly differently. So there's a massive benefit for us to doing both of that work because when we're drafting our employment contracts for clients, we can have input to see, well, we know we were in the Federal Circuit Court last week, this got struck down, or we can see that this authority was just handed down. And they said specifically, this clause in this contract can't be drafted that way. So we can work with our clients proactively to make sure that all of their documents are up to date and compliant with whatever the latest authorities are.
Yeah, fantastic. And circling back a little bit to the leadership piece and talking more about your vision for your own career, how do you see your career progressing? What are your goals and aspirations?
Well, in the immediate term, I'm really focused on growing and developing my skills as an employment lawyer so I can get recognised as a respected specialist in my field. Ultimately, I want to grow and lead a successful employment law practice, but I've always had a really strong interest in legal policy development. So I want to be able to balance that with contributing to society generally with the development and creation of good law in the industrial relations space.
Great. And you talked to me about policy before, and just before we started shooting today's show, you mentioned to me something about politics. Do you want to tell me about your background in politics?
Yeah, and that's what got me. That's what got me started in law initially, was an interest in politics and policy development. And I started my law degree not thinking that I would probably practice law, but I dipped my toe in it and absolutely loved it, and I've stayed there. But I do keep touch with the policy aspect. I was appointed earlier this year to the Queensland Law Society Industrial Law Committee, so I still get to contribute to industrial relations policy at a state and federal level.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we definitely need more voices in policy, and policy is a really interesting pathway for lawyers as an alternative pathway, or, as you're finding, supplementary pathway, so you can have both run parallel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the development of good law in the industrial relations space needs to be informed by people who are at the coalface there practicing the law, so we can provide input on what's working for our clients and what isn't working for our clients.
Great. And in terms of influences for you and mentors, you've had a sort of diverse career up to date, sort of doing general practice and then employment in a large firm where your managing partner and sort of lead partner is out of Melbourne. Who do you look to as mentors in the space that you practice in?
Yeah, I'm really lucky at the moment that the mentors that I have are in the firm that I have. Two of our partners, Lisa Aitken, the founding partner, and Chris Campbell, the partner who I work really closely with, as well as one of our senior associates, Hamish Proctor. They're all incredibly talented employment lawyers, but they all give the time to teach and allow me to learn, which is just completely invaluable to me.
Apart from the leaders within your firm as primary resources of mentorship, which is a great place to start for mentors, but sometimes we look outside of our immediate firm or even to our social networks, etc., or even social platforms for other input. So do you listen to any legal podcasts or follow any legal influencers?
I don't listen to any legal podcasts, but one of my mentors in the employment law space is a really respected employment lawyer. He was my employment lecturer at uni, Mitch Devine. He has his own practice on the Sunshine Coast, and he was one of the two individuals who were actually teaching the QLS Special Accreditation course for employment law. And I've always looked to Mitch for mentorship and guidance in the law.
Fantastic. In the practice of employment, there are always some really juicy stories and some interesting matters, some unusual cases that are good to share over a glass of wine at a dinner party or to have a chat around the bubbler about. I think it was the same even when I was practicing as a medical negligence defence lawyer. It was a really interesting, you'd have some real doozies of stories, right? It wasn't always the boring, mundane. You get these, nice little nuggets of funny or interesting or wacky. Did you have any stories like that might have, been the story that you always tell around the dinner table?
I think probably the most unusual case, and it might seem nerdy for as an employment lawyer, but the most unusual case I had was it involved a farming family partnership, and family disputes always bring a strange element into a litigation. But we started a litigation for an employee for an unpaid wages claim. He'd been working in a family farming partnership for almost 40 years, and he'd been underpaid in almost every respect in every single one of those 40 years. And the partnership was dissolving and falling apart. There was a dispute between an uncle and an aunt and a dad. And so we were sort of thrown into the middle and leveraged our position as suing them at the same time to all bring them to the table. And we ended up actually resolving not just our unpaid entitlements claim for our client, but the whole dispute between the family, the farming partnership, everything was put to bed. We ended up getting about $180,000 in wages, which is what we were seeking for our client. But we also got him an equity interest in the family farming partnership that was worth just over $500,000, and the benefit that we'd put this family dispute to bed, and everyone got along with it at the end of the day.
Wow, I bet that was a real high five moment. Everyone in the firm would have been shouting and jumping up and down and making big celebration plans, and the client would have been very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a much better result than we'd anticipated.
Yeah, oh, well, we love them. We love those fist-pumping moments in the law. You got to take them and really enjoy them when they come, and sometimes they come from unexpected places. So what a great story. Interests outside the law. I suspect, like we've talked about earlier, you're very, very busy, and I'd hate to presume you have time outside of your practice, but what do you do outside of work?
I think that's the default response from lawyers, is that I don't have spare time, but I do try and make spare time. I'm getting married next month, and I have a 6-month-old baby.
Wow and wow. Holy moly, you're a busy, busy man.
So most spare time is spent with the family.
Boy or girl?
Boy. We try and enjoy the beautiful Sunshine Coast, the beaches, or the hinterland with family as much as possible. And I also referee soccer in my spare time as well. And that's about it.
Oh, that's pretty good. I think we've got a wedding planning happening, got a small bubba, you've moved firms, chosen your specialty, and you've crammed a lot in.
Yeah, absolutely. I started my Masters in Labour Law and Relations at the Uni of Sydney last year as well. So I had to throw all of that into the mix too.
These interviews just make me feel really, really slack, and make me feel like I'm not doing very much with my day. So incredible. And I am wholly unsurprised that you've been nominated for this award. You're clearly a very dedicated person who has got a lot on their plate, but is someone who pushes forward despite those busy personal circumstances. As legal recruiters, we hear a lot of advice. And sometimes when you become a candidate of ours, there are lots of people that are in the ears of those lawyers and candidates and saying you should do this or you should do that. Some of it is just noise, and some of it's really poignant, really good, strong advice that is deeply impactful in someone's career. What's the best legal career advice that you've received?
Well, I'm not sure if it qualifies as career advice, but it certainly changed the course of my career. I actually started studying a Bachelor of Accounting before I got into law. And I sat down. I'd started an internship in an accounting firm about 8 weeks before the uni semester started, my first uni semester. And I sat down in my very first class, and the tutor started by rattling off like 2 or 3 dad jokes, like really lame, terrible dad jokes. Nothing else, no other intro. And then just said, you're going to be accountants, you can't have personality, so you've just got to memorize a few of those. And then just carried on with the tutorial.
Oh my goodness.
He was totally joking. But to me, it was just like, I can't do this.
I'm not sure if this is a fit.
And so I dropped all of my accounting classes that day, and it was just sort of kismet that the university announced that they were starting their law program the next year.
That is a really, really funny story. Yeah. Wow. And I bet you if you went back and told the accounting professor that determined was the turning point, I mean, what a story. And they might have a giggle, but perhaps.
No offense to any accountants listening.
Look, there'll probably be a few, but I think no, we love our accounting friends, but I think that there is a place for people with personality in accounting equally as there is in law, but we are pleased to have you as one of us. I'm always intrigued, and maybe it's a weird question for a legal recruiter to ask, but if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be?
I think if I wasn't a lawyer, I would probably be in, it's kind of a boring answer, but probably some sort of political advisory role. I was working in politics throughout my law degree, and that's sort of where I expected my career to end up, and unexpectedly got into legal practice and found that I liked it more than I thought I would, and fell in love with it and stayed. So if I wasn't a lawyer, I would probably be working in politics.
Mm-hmm. Industrial Relations Commission, here you come. I reckon it could be the next commissioner.
I sort of picked an odd selection of professions that people usually don't like: lawyer and politician and referee. So
you're destined to be hated,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
by the general public. But we love you. We love you here at Dare. We love you in the legal profession. The QLS is very excited that you are also a nominee, and you are in great company with your fellow nominees. So no matter the outcome on the 20th of August, it will be a moment to celebrate, and I hope you can take that for what it will be and be very excited no matter what. And we are very, very happy that you joined us here today in the studio.
Thanks for having me.